Might be a few more jump on like they did on Monday as well. I'll just go ahead and reintroduce myself. My name is Sherry Lewis, Sherri, last name Lewis, on the screen, Lewis, and a DC Water spokesperson. I will give you a brief update, operational update on where we are in the repair process. And then we also have Director Clint Osborne from HSEMA joining us today to talk a little bit more about the cooperative effort with the federal government with the emergency declaration. So I'll go ahead and get started. We are making some really significant progress out here at the collapse site. For those who've been following this really closely, we had run into an issue with a very, very large rock and debris dam inside the pipe and had to sort of readjust how we were going to get that removed. So I can tell you today that we've expanded this excavation area around that damaged section of pipe so that we could get to that rock dam. We've removed sections of the pipe over the last couple of days, and so far have removed about 45 feet of that rock and debris dam. We're now down to maybe the last 8 or 10 feet of that. And then once we get that removed, we'll be able to begin our process that's necessary to begin the geopolymer application inside the pipe, which is the key to the repair. Once we remove the rock dam, what we're going to do, we need to prep the pipe. So that means we need to go in there, we need to clean it. We also have some additional muck and debris upstream of the damaged section that also has to be cleaned out. And there's all this prep work that has to be done to begin the repair. What we plan to do is a geopolymer application. It's a material that is as strong as concrete, but more resistant to any type of deterioration. We will go in once we get that pipe all cleaned out, prepped, and ready. We'll go in, we'll put in essentially what amounts to a steel rebar framing around the pipe to provide it some additional support, and we'll go in and begin putting in the geopolymer layers. Now, that is a process, right? You have to spray it on, and it has to cure in layers, so it's a process. We expect that to start as early as next week. It just really depends on how long it takes us to get all the prep work done to make sure that that geopolymer application can be applied in and here properly. So we're making huge progress, huge strides here on the repair. We also had Secretary Lee Zeldin from the EPA out on the site today. We had a very productive tour showing him the work that we were doing, how the bypass system worked, and had a very good discussion with him about what the work we were doing and the progress that we've made. So that's an update on what's been happening. We have not had any overflows into the Potomac River since February 8th. So I believe that's going on 17 days now. And we continue to do our water quality sampling. Our pumps continue to work really well in that enhanced bypass system. We actually added a 14th pump today. So that's just going to give us another layer of redundancy and improve the reliability of the pumping system to ensure everything continues to function as it has been. So I will go ahead now have Director Osborne talk to you a little bit about sort of their role and what they've been doing in the coordination efforts on this incident with the emergency declaration. Director Osborne?
Hey, good afternoon. Sound check?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, so we have an approved emergency declaration from the president. It's administered by FEMA and EPA Assistant Secretary. The EPA Assistant Secretary for Water is the senior response official designated by the White House. So what we have been doing over the last several days is working together to both familiarize the incoming personnel with the site, as Sherry talked about, and then put together the organization that's going to allow us to best support DC Water with the repairs. That involves a series of meetings to identify the different lines of effort. I know that Sherry did a great job of talking about the repair effort. We also monitoring water runoff. I think that was sort of very publicly covered over the weekend Corps of Engineers came in under their own authority and helped with some drainage channels to sort of secure water and keep it from water that was coming from outside of the break site and the repair site, keeping it from running across and entering the river. We have FEMA's Incident Management Assistance Team embedded with us over here at the District EOC. We're working together to really figure out what needs to be done and where we can incorporate the federal agencies that are supporting this effort with the most effective, most timely work. With that, I'll just answer any questions, Sherry, when you're ready. Hey, Sherry, I think you're on mute now.
Yep, sorry about that. So if everybody could just raise their hands, we'll take questions one by one. I do want to mention that I am actually in our mobile command unit, so I apologize if there's any sort of activity behind me, but we'll try and keep that under control. So I think we've got Mark Seagraves first. What we'll do is we'll unmute you one by one, and you can go ahead and ask your questions.
Yeah, Mr. Seagraves, you're unmuted.
Yeah, hey,
Mark, go
thanks
ahead.
thanks very much. Is it possible for Director Osborne to turn his camera on for us television people who are recording this? And please, does that not count as my one question also? Thank you.
Yeah, just 1 second, Mark.
Thanks, Clint.
Okay.
So Sherry, let me ask you while we're waiting for Director Osborne, can I ask you, this sounds like good news as far as making headway on that rock dam that you seem to have the majority of it out of the way. Are you still on target for mid-March as your target date to complete repair, the preliminary repair to the pipeline so that the interceptor is back to working and there's no more diversion through the canal?
Yeah, all this work and the progress that we've made over the last couple of days in removing all the rock and the debris dam is on target with us getting the full flow restored to the Potomac Interceptor. So that's the emergency repair. We do expect that emergency repair to be done by mid-March. So we've made significant progress, and the key really was to getting all that rock and debris out of the pipe so we could start that repair process.
And Sherry, can I ask another question of you before the director comes on? I have a question from.
Sure.
Have you guys experienced any workplace accidents it seems to be dangerous, heavy work in confined spaces? Has there been any workplace accidents or have you had any incidents where any of your employees have come into contact with any of the MRSA staff, E. coli, and either gotten ill or had to been tested for that? And is there a protocol in place for all of that?
So I will say that these are all, we have emergency contractors and teams. This is the work that we do on a regular basis. Everybody is wearing the appropriate PPE, protective equipment, and all of that as far as the contact with any of the wastewater. This is what they do on a day-to-day basis. We're prepared for it. We have the equipment and everything that's necessary to protect the workers. You're right. It's an active construction site. So I'd have to check to see if there have been any site-related injuries, and I can get back to you on that. I think the one thing that I will say is that, one of the issues that we've had is this is an area that's easily accessible, right, to the public. And so I think the one thing that we have seen is there are people who are coming along, wanting to see what's going on, coming along Clara Barton Parkway or walking, along from Lock 10 and the canal. And so we really want people to understand that it is an active construction zone, and only the authorized personnel that are working in this site or accompanied by, someone like myself when I'm bringing you guys out, that those are the only authorized personnel out there. People need to have the proper, safety equipment, hard hats, vests, all of that on. And we do not want the general public coming out here trying to check out what's going on for themselves.
I appreciate it. And then Director Osborne, if I could ask you just about the logistics of the emergency declaration, and if you can help us understand how the requests, particularly for funding, is being made? Have there been any funds dispersed? How exactly does that work? Does that come through DC? And in your original declaration from the mayor, it went well beyond asking for money just for the $20 million estimate for the repairs to the Interceptor. It included upgrades at Blue Plains, as well as, I believe, funding for the Big Dig. So I'm just wondering if there's anything you can kind of update us on that process. And again, if any money has been requested and or distributed.
Thanks for the question, Mark. So we made two requests. The first was the formal request for a disaster declaration. FEMA has awarded us what's called an emergency declaration, which is a different type of declaration, same request process, but in their estimation, we started with what's called an emergency declaration. The emergency declaration authorizes what's called direct federal assistance for the district from federal agencies. And what that means is that the federal agencies can provide direct services, which equates to, in some cases, cost savings to the district, but reimbursement of our costs is not currently authorized. We're going to continue to work through the preliminary damage assessment process with FEMA this week to determine whether we can convince FEMA and the White House to upgrade us to a major disaster declaration, which would get us reimbursement. So right now, what we have going is DC Water continues to make the repairs. The Corps of Engineers is working under their own authority right now, so they came in even before the disaster was approved, and they started working with DC Water to identify ways to help. That work came directly through a conversation and is happening under the Corps of Engineers direct authority. As we go through this process, what will happen is working with DC Water, the Corps of Engineers, the EPA, and the U.S. Public Health Service will look for different ways and different activities that the federal agencies can support within their specialties. And then we'll look at whether they have the ability to support that directly through their own authorities, where they might cover the costs, or whether we need to make an official resource request through the disaster. And when the disaster request comes through from the district to FEMA, and FEMA determines that it's a related piece of work, they will assign it to one of the agencies. And at that point, we would be responsible for 25% of the costs. And the federal government would actually, FEMA would actually bill us back for that.
Thank you.
All right. I think that was about 3 or 4 questions, Mark, but thank you. I think I have, is it Mike next?
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. Mic is on. All right, Mike, you are muted.
All right, thank you for taking our questions here. So my first question, I guess, to kind of go back on what Mark was asking, that 25%, I know there's been some work in trying to figure out who would be on the hook when it comes to splitting up that 25%, if it would be split up. Do we have any better idea on, would it be other municipalities or other states paying part of the bill here if it stands as it currently is set up?
So we do know that DC Water and our wholesale customers will bear the cost of that 25% for the repairs. The exact split on that and exactly how that will be divided, I don't think has necessarily been determined, but we do have a governing agreement. I can certainly send you the link if you want to sort of parse all the formulas, but I think that's still to be determined.
All right, my other question too, if you can just kind of, in more layman's terms, spell out how the repair will happen with the geopolymer.
Sure. So once we remove the rock and debris dam, get the pipe, the muck and stuff upstream out, we'll go in and we need to basically pressure wash the walls of the interceptor. That will allow the geopolymer to adhere properly. In doing that, what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll essentially frame the pipe with steel rebar to provide additional support and reinforcement. And then we will begin the process of spraying the geopolymer, which is essentially sort of creating a new tunnel wall. And that has to be done as a process in layers, right? And it needs to cure between layers until we get it to that thickness that we need. And once that is done and complete, we'll have the emergency repair will be done. and we will be able to move on to sort of the second phase, which is that longer term rehabilitation that we are going to accelerate to rehabilitate more than 2,700 linear feet of this section of the Potomac Interceptor. That's part of the work that was planned to start this summer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Let's see, who do we have next? Is that Beatrice?
Hey guys, thanks for having this. I just had a quick question about EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin and his visit. Can you talk a little bit about any resources that they've offered to help with this specifically today? I know that there's been a lot of conversations between the feds as well as the state and locals. But I also additionally was wondering about the daily testing, because I know that was a part of the request that was made in the presidential declaration. Is that still on board and on track to happen next month, or is there going to be any modifications to the water testing?
So I'll take part of it, and then I'll have Director Osborne take the other part of it. What we did today with Secretary Zeldin was show him the site, show him the work that we were doing, where the collapse site was, how the bypass system is working, and sort of walked him through our process, answered some questions about the work that we're doing. So we had a very productive discussion. As far as our coordination with EPA, that's something that has been ongoing from the beginning of this incident, working with them as well as some of our other federal, state, and local partners. As far as like funding assistance and all that all goes through that emergency declaration, which is being coordinated through HCEMA. So I'd let Director Osborne, if you could, talk about that as well as the water quality testing, which is, just to be clear, there's the water quality testing that the district is doing, and then we are also doing our own water quality sampling from DC by DC Water that is separate from that, and we are reporting those results out daily.
Yeah, we're working towards the Department of Energy and the Environment, DOEE, has been doing weekly sampling and posting it to their website so everybody can just see what the numbers are. We're working towards daily sampling, and the EPA has confirmed that they're going to provide us some laboratory support to expedite that process for us. In terms of the funding, once again, all of the funding that's occurring on the district side is happening as a course of the work. There's no authorized reimbursement at this point. So any support that the federal agencies provide, they have one of two ways that they can provide it. They can provide it out of their own authorities and provide it directly, or if we get to a point where we have a request and they need to figure out a way to make it happen, we would be responsible if we make the formal request for a specific type of support for 25% of their costs for that. To date, we have not released any request for support to FEMA.
And just confirming, he's the highest ranking official from the government that has visited the site.
So actually yesterday, the Secretary of the Interior was out here on the site with the National Park Service. So, I guess I don't know where secretaries, you'd have to make that determination, but we've had, the Secretary of the Interior and, the Secretary of the EPA out here. Okay, next.
Next we have Martin, and you are unmuted.
Hey, Sherry, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. So just on this issue of access to the site, because I know a bunch of reporters, myself included, over the last 2 weeks or so, have gone up there, walked from Lock 10 up to see the site. So clearly the CNO, the towpath itself, remains open. Are you guys essentially saying that, let's say this weekend is supposed to be nice. Let's say someone takes a bike ride up the towpath. Should they assume the towpath is closed in that section and that they should just not even try?
No, to be clear, no. The towpath is open. That part is open
Okay.
to the public. What we are seeing is that along Clara Barton Parkway, we have a lane that is closed with our construction crews, but people can still walk sort of along that area, right? And so what we're finding is there are people who are sort of walking along Clara Barton Parkway up to the construction site, trying to get a look at sort of what's going on. So that's what I'm talking about. The C&O Canal towpath is not part of the construction area. It's open to the public. Everything is fenced in from that area.
Right.
But as you can imagine, with the construction that is ongoing, right, we can't fence in that entire stretch along Clara Barton Parkway because we have to have our equipment getting in and out, right? So there are openings and areas along there for our equipment and our workers and the things that we need to get in and out of the job site. So that's where we would ask the public, like, I understand you want to see what's going on. They're welcome to stay on the areas that are open along the C&O Canal towpath, but we need people to please avoid going directly to the construction site. Oh.
All right, and then just one quick follow-up on that. You mentioned that once the emergency repairs are done, there's also going to be the repairs done to the broader section of the interceptor.
Yep.
But is the existing site going to remain, like, is that section going to remain open to the pipe, or are you going to close it back up? Like, what's that going to look like in terms of active construction site moving forward after the emergency repairs are done?
Yeah, so once the emergency repairs are done and the full flow and functionality is restored into the Potomac Interceptor, we'll be able to eliminate the need for the bypass system. So you'll see the flow will no longer be going through the C&O Canal. We'll be able to begin the environmental remediation as far as that's concerned. But there will be areas of the Potomac Interceptor that are still open, because one of the processes that we are looking to do here is called slip lining. And when you do slip lining, you're actually taking sections of pipe, generally, I believe around 10 feet long. So you take a pipe that is slightly smaller in diameter than the existing one, which is 72 inches. And you're essentially putting new pipe inside of the old pipe. That requires us to have sections of the Potomac Interceptor still open so that we can insert that pipe. We did that on a section of the Interceptor, I think about a quarter mile or a half mile west of this location, and was completed. There is a video on our YouTube channel that shows what that process looks like. And when you see it, you can see that the interceptor is open and they've got all the equipment and how they push that pipe in. So yes, there will still be some areas that are open. We have brought some odor control measures out here as well to try and mitigate some of those odors that people might encounter, especially as we get to these warmer months. But yes, that will be part of the ongoing process, 9 to 10 months for the rehabilitation of this roughly 2,700 linear feet. Anything else, Martin?
Nope, that's everything. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, let's see. Anybody else?
Yeah, looks like next we have Liberty Simmons.
Okay.
Liberty, you are now unmuted.
Liberty, you can
Hi,
unmute yourself.
Sherry, Corey, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry, I came in late because of some technical difficulties. So if you said this already, I apologize. But so there is talks or some DC leaders saying that they expect that the river restrictions will be lifted possibly March 2nd. I wanted to know if DC Water thinks that there will be enough progress made on the repairs and everything to support lifting the restrictions, because there are concerns from community members and leaders in other jurisdictions about whether the data and science would support lifting of those restrictions. And then I also wanted to know about the odor control measures you put out there, and if you can provide any specifics on the environmental restoration plans.
So I don't have specific details on exactly what those odor control measures are. I just know that they're measures we've used in other projects. So I have to get back to you on the specifics of that and maybe the mechanisms of how some of that works. So that was a multi-pronged question there. I can tell you about the environmental restoration plan. still being in development, but I think we're in the home stretch. We're waiting to get to work through some details and get the final approvals for that, and we'll release that to the public when we can. We're doing some mitigations, working in conjunction with the Army Corps, as I think Director Osborne mentioned earlier, where they are working to capture stormwater runoff from the streets around here, which and then divert that directly out of the area, because the issue with that is that when you get all this stormwater runoff, it's running over those areas where the wastewater had gone and can still carry some residual wastewater and contaminants into the river. So there are some environmental mitigations that are occurring. The greater I guess restoration plan would begin once the repair is complete and we don't have any risk of overflows anymore, and we no longer need the bypass in the C&O Canal. We have had teams out here already that are starting some of that preliminary work, right? Marking the areas where the work's going to be, and different things along those lines, working with our partner agencies, and that type of thing. So there is ongoing sort of preparation work that's happening out here on the site now as we await the final restoration plan being approved. And then what else
And
did you
then
ask? I'm sorry.
sorry, sure. I know there was like a lot. I was trying to get all of my questions in, but the lifting of restrictions, does DC Water
Okay.
believe that the repairs will be significant enough to support that? Because there are concerns about that March 2nd timeline and the science and data backing supporting lifting of.
Yeah. So if you look at the science and the data that we have coming in, it really is downstream of here trending in the right direction. And we leave it to the, officials from DC and Maryland, who have the expertise and issue those types of health advisories and things like that as far as river activity to make those decisions. It's important for you to understand that there is already a normal wide variability in water quality at different times based on a lot of different factors. There are, there's illegal dumping, there's, stormwater runoff, which pulls in all the, say, pesticides and the, pet matter and all that stuff that runs off the streets and into the waterways as well, that all contribute to water quality. And so during right after a heavy rainfall or a heavy, snow melt event, you do see the potential for spikes in areas, and this is all normal variability. We haven't had an overflow that reached the Potomac River in 17 days. So, you have to be cognizant of the normal urban river environment before drawing any conclusions directly to this incident. Again, we haven't had any overflows in more than 2 weeks, 17 days. So what you're seeing downstream may not necessarily be directly related to this and just part of the normal variability in the river. So I'll let Director Osborne talk a little bit more about, DC's role as far as that's concerned, because they're the ones that March 2nd deadline is you're talking about. That is something that is the district as the sort of the oversight regulatory agency's decision.
Yeah, Sherry gave a really good overview of our assessment of the situation. I think it's really important to understand that there is not untreated sewage that's flowing into the river, and there's not been a large amount even before the last overflow. So we continue to monitor the river levels, and we're going to continue to monitor them and follow the science where it takes us. And when as I think Dr. Bennett said last week during the press conference, when the river levels are within that sort of standard range of variability, but on our low normal bacterial levels, that we will look to lift those restrictions. I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Director Osborne. And I think that, for folks who may not have seen it, the DOE did have a very good presentation as part of the mayor's briefing last week to put some context on some of the water quality readings. showing, what they are on average, I think from 2011 to 2025, and then the range that they have seen both on the low and the high end on a variability basis. So, in a given year. So in those years. So I think it's important. It might be good for you to take a look at that, so that you get an understanding of what is part of that normal fluctuation that Director Osborne just talked about. Any other? I think there's like one or two more questions, and then I think we need to wrap up. I'll
Yeah.
take the next one, and then I think Mark, you're last.
Yeah, there's a 314435. You are muted.
314 number. You can unmute yourself. You may have to, is it *6? Is that what it is to unmute?
Yeah, star
If
6.
you're on the phone?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Hi, sorry about the delay there. I was curious if in your meeting with Administrator Zeldin, if you had any conversations, not around the emergency declaration, but future funding needs and opportunities for grants or other federal funding that might be available. Is there thinking about what those opportunities might be, and was he possibly receptive to what was being asked?
So the secretary's visit out here was really just to focus on showing him the work that we are doing, and the progress that we are making on this immediate incident. Any other, additional discussions or things that I think, our leadership will address down the road. But right now, today's visit was really focused on understanding what was happening here and what we were doing to get this emergency repair done and protect the health of the Potomac River.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Mark, last question.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Director Osborne, I want to make sure I understand what you were saying about the funding, because when we saw the initial press release from FEMA, it spoke of a 75-25 split for the costs incurred by the district. And even Colonel Para from Army Corps seemed to reiterate that on the press call the other day. Now it seems like, and this is what I want to make sure I'm correct, or that I understand what you're saying, is that federal reimbursement is by no means guaranteed as of yet. More things and requests have to happen before the federal government agrees to put up any costs toward any funds towards covering the cost of this. Is that correct? Am I understanding you?
Yeah, let me thanks for that question, Mark. And this is a challenging issue. So let me break this down into like two buckets, right? The first bucket is our costs that we've incurred, either DC Water or the district. Traditionally, under a major disaster declaration, our costs would be eligible for reimbursement. Under a normal emergency, under a normal declaration, the starting point is always a 75-25% split. So for example, DC Water's costs, we would be able to seek reimbursement for their emergency protective measures, their emergency repair costs, and we would seek 75% of the total costs. And the local, between DC Water and the government, but in this case, DC Water as the local authority responsible for the repair work, would pay 25% of that cost. They would not be reimbursed for the final 25% of their costs, and they would be paying for that out of pocket. So that's one category of costs. Under the current assigned emergency declaration, that type of cost, reimbursement for local costs incurred, is not allowable. So right now, we're working under an emergency declaration that only authorizes direct federal assistance. And so I want to take a separate example. So if we ask the Army Corps of Engineers, we the district, as the requesting authority, ask the Army Corps of Engineers through FEMA to pick up a task to do something, then they would do that work, they would track their costs, and they would cover 75% of that cost. And then FEMA would take the 25% that's remaining and they would charge that to the district, and the district would reimburse FEMA for the 25% of the costs. It's a really fine distinction, I know, but the distinction is that We are authorized to ask for assistance from the federal government, and the federal government agencies are authorized to provide that assistance to us, but not yet are we authorized to receive reimbursement for the costs we are incurring to manage this emergency. Does that help?
I'd like to say yes, but I'm still a little confused. But just if you could just boil it down, that we're not at the point where this repair qualifies or has been guaranteed federal reimbursement. More things the major declaration has to be declared by the president for that to happen. Is that correct?
That's correct. We would need to be escalated from an emergency declaration to a major disaster declaration in order for the district to be reimbursed for the costs that we have and will continue to incur during this incident.
Thank you. And then Sherry, if I could just ask quickly, is there any update to the 2024 report that Director Gaddis talked about at the press conference that had been discovered, unearthed, or whatever? And do you have any update on what that 2024 report said about this section of the Interceptor and if it's going to be released to the public?
Yeah, so what I can tell you, Mark, is that, as part of our review, we did identify that additional 2024 condition assessment that's related to this same segment. So we are evaluating that alongside the earlier assessments that we did and the inspection records to see and make sure that we understand fully how all that different data aligns. So we are committed to a rigorous review process of that and reviewing those facts. And we do plan on sharing that, what we learn fully once it's evaluated. But we need to make sure that we look at all of the data and that we do a full and thorough evaluation and assessment of how all that data relates before we're able to, provide that.
Thanks very much.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you joining us. I really want to thank Director Osborne for being with us as well to talk about that federal coordination that they are assisting us with. So we really do appreciate it. We will continue to update daily on the progress that we are making. For folks who may not have seen it on our social media accounts, we did put out some images from the site today showing some of that remaining rock and debris dam that is in there, as well as the additional pump that we are bringing online. So you're welcome to use any of those images with the DC Water credit, but we do have that out there on social media if you want to take a look. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.